It's the comedic.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Brown versus the Board of Education, segregation and civil rights. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the Brown decision of 1954, segregation and the civil rights movement that flowed out of the Brown decision, Dr. RMitchell1, a professor at Fisk University and an individual, Dr. Mitchell, I might say, who has made a tremendous contribution to comments with Dr. James Haney by the many shows that we've had an opportunity to deal with you. Dr. Mitchell, let's see if we might be able, before we start today talking about Brown v. Board of Education and the civil rights movement, let's have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of leading you to where we are today.
Well, Dr. Haney, it's certainly been a pleasure to have been asked on so many occasions to be able to enter the conversation and dialogue with you over last, I guess, 15 years now. Actually, this year I celebrated my 25th anniversary at Fisk. I've been at Fisk for 25 years. I did my undergraduate work at Fisk. My degrees are from Tennessee State and Middle Tennessee State and postdoctoral studies at Harvard. But for 25 years I've served a myriad of capacities at Fisk. But I've always been in the classroom. Served as vice president, assistant to the president, and dean of academic affairs. But I've always taken a particular pride and pleasure in teaching bright young people, because that's what I think higher education is really about.
Dr. Mitchell, you know, what we've tried to do over the last 4 or 5 shows is to recognize that May the 4th of 2004 is the 50th anniversary of the Brown versus the Board of Education decision of Topeka, Kansas in 1954. And we wanted to at least recognize that anniversary by having a series of television shows dealing with certain aspects of Brown. I think we have to admit up front personally that we believe that the Brown decision is just about the most important decision made since the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. And what we'd like to do today is to have you to give us some information to sort of flow in to the other shows that we've had. We've already dealt with Brown and the law with Dr. Attorney Blackshear. We've dealt with Brown and public education in the South with Ms. Linda Wynn and Dr. Lewis Baldwin. And we've also dealt with Brown and diversity with the persons from Tennessee State University, Dr. Coleman McGinnis and Dr. Raymond Richardson, as well as Mr. Mark Gunter. And so in a real sense, you represent the 4th attempt at Brown versus the Board of Education dealing with civil rights, simply indicating that not only do we wish to celebrate the 50th anniversary, but we recognize the significance of this decision, not only in diversity, but almost in every aspect. And so let's have you to start talking about one important element in Brown, and that is the separation of the races.
Well, Brown attempted to remedy what had been standard in the United States even before it was the United States. That is the separation of people by race. Initially, African Americans were enslaved. And during that enslavement, it was very important to deny certain aspects because it's difficult to keep people enslaved when they're educated. So in the colonial period, in the period before the Civil War, there were laws opposing education for African Americans. So that had become ingrained in America. Even after the Civil War, the great victory which would bring about with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, ideally it brought about the end of legal slavery. It made me free, but unfortunately it didn't make me equal. It didn't give me any parity. So in a South and in a North, after the war, there's still a separation of people based upon race, a denial of opportunity. This had been the de facto case, and then you have the very, very famous case of Plessy versus Ferguson. People can be separated based upon race. How much black blood makes you subject to be a Negro? 1 drop, 1 degree. What Plessy said was it established the principle a really un-American principle of separate but equal. How can you really have things separate but equal? From a common sense standpoint, that just doesn't work out, especially when you expect the majority group to provide equally for the minority group. So Plessy versus Ferguson established constitutionally the separation of the races and second-class status for African Americans. That will not be addressed. Plessy versus Ferguson was 1896, and that will not be addressed, not overturned until 1954 with the Brown decision.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Mitchell, let us make preparations for this first commercial break. And when we come back, I think you have us in the Plessy era.
Yes.
And so what we'd like for you to do during the second segment is to give our young people, more than anything, people who might not have lived through that experience, some idea of what it meant to be segregated in the period prior to 1954. We'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is Brown